Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I am so excited to see so many familiar names come up on my Zoom list and so many new names and faces. This is fantastic, a great way to start off 2021. Bye-bye, 2020. See you later. Adios. Arrivederci. Ciao. You name it. Put it behind us. Okay. So good evening and welcome everyone to Our Lady of Santa Clara's January's Women's Monthly Reflection Talk. This month's topic is The Temperament God Gave You, based on the book by Art and Lorraine Bennett. Our guest speaker is Tracy Tomiak. We're so happy to have you join us. We hope and pray you and your family are all well. We know your time is precious, and we are grateful that you would like to spend an evening with us. From October through May, we'll be hosting a monthly talk that is relevant to our faith, society, and culture. Please go to olscretreat.org for more information on the talks and retreats offered. My name, as many of you know, is Kathleen Whitmer, and I am so fortunate to be part of a group of core women who host these events every month. They are Gail De Silva, Elaine Terracini, Patty LaBerge, Camille Stevens, and Jennifer Dodoni. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to reach out to any of us. We are here to help. A big thank you to Father for those beautiful masses, to be a support and to accompany us as we host these events every month, and to Natasha Sorabi, who's making sure the virtual experience is a smooth one. Now on to some housekeeping notes. New this month, because it's a new year, we're going to allow, which we would like, for the participants to ask their own questions. So we will go to the Q&A section, and feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. We ask you to be respectful, to try not to talk over each other. If you do feel more comfortable, feel free to use the chat section that way to type in your chat, and I'll be more than happy to moderate that too. But no one wants to see my mug more than you have to ask the questions, but we'd really like for the attendees to feel free to ask questions. So no need to do the interface if we don't want to. I will have someone monitoring our Facebook Live, and they will be getting those questions to me. For a better viewing experience, please go up to your right and click Speaker View. Okay, upcoming talks, we have February 23rd on the 5 love languages, based on the book by Gary Chapman, our speaker, Lynn Derry. March 23rd is the decision-making steps to making decisions based on the Ignatian methods. Speaker, Father Thomas Vendetti. We encourage you, of course, to go ahead and register to those as soon as possible. I'm really hoping that everybody got the link to do the temperament quiz and got the download for the handout. If you have not, we will make sure we get those to you after the talk in a thank you email that will follow up. And as always, these videos are recorded and will be put up on the Our Lady of Santa Clara website and YouTube channel. Okay, for those who are just joining us, welcome again to Our Lady of Santa Clara's January monthly reflection talk on The Temperament God Gave You with our speaker, Tracy Tomiak. Now, a few words about our speaker. Tracy is a resident of Canada. She is a registered psychotherapist in the city of Calgary. She runs a private practice that specializes in marriage and family issues, as well as anxiety and depression. She's also a family counselor for a private school for children with autism. Tracy has a passion to integrate her faith into therapy and feels blessed to be able to journey with people through difficult times of their lives. Tracy is an active member of the Calgary Catholic community, providing counseling support to many Catholic parishes, as well as working with the Tribunal Office. She's a published author and an international speaker. Tracy's professional credentials are important, but it's her personal credentials that she's most proud of. She's been married to her very good-looking husband, Bill, for 31 years and has 5 adult children, 3 son-in-laws, a soon-to-be son-in-law, and a proud grandparent to Ben and James. Tracy loves kayaking and outdoor activities. Her favorite saint is Mother Teresa, and her favorite quote by Saint Teresa of Calcutta fits perfectly into this evening's talk. God doesn't ask us for perfection. He asks us for fidelity. We're so looking forward, Tracy, to this talk this evening and for you giving us the time and saying yes and coming live from our neighbors to the north in Canada.
Thanks, Kathleen. Obviously, my preference would be to be down there in person because it's minus 15 Celsius up here today, so I don't have a clue what that is in Fahrenheit, but it is cold. So for sure, my preference would be to be with you in person, but here we are living in this world of COVID, and so we are here as Zoom partners throughout the course of this evening. Lag on my video. So Kathleen, are you getting a lag on your video?
I am getting definite choppiness.
Okay.
That seems better.
Okay. So we're gonna have to work with the internet tonight, ladies. And I'm not sure that I know the saint of technology, but whoever it is, we are going to invoke them in this moment to kind of help us get through this evening. So I am going to share my screen with you and go through most of the presentation in that way. Okay, so Kathleen, I'll just get a verbal from you that my first slide is up.
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. So our discussion tonight is going to be on knowing ourselves through the lens of temperament. Father alluded to it throughout Mass if you participated with us with Mass. Of course, you all, hopefully, that have joined us tonight were able to do the temperament test. If not, no worries. You can go back and do it afterwards. And what I will do is at the end of this, I will share this presentation with Kathleen and she can send it out because really it has a lot of the temperament information on that. And so I do want you to have that as well. So that will be part of your package as a follow-up. So please don't be stressed about taking notes. I really want us just to kind of settle into knowing ourselves through the lens of temperament and temperament that God gave us. And so really that is knowing ourselves through the lens of God. He sees us. I want to start with a quote from a saint. I'm going to say that they have way more information than I have. This is St. Angela of Foligno, and she is not a very popular saint, so don't be concerned if it is something that you have never heard before or a saint that you haven't heard before. I'd actually never heard of her either. But St. Angela has this quote that says, "Our perfection certainly consists in knowing God and ourselves." And I thought that was very relevant to our topic tonight of just knowing ourselves through the lens of temperament. St. Angela was a wife and a mother who became immersed in the quest for wealth and social position. Around the age of 40, she recognized the emptiness of her life and sought God's help in the sacrament of penance. Shortly after her conversion, her husband and children died. Selling most of her possessions, she entered the secular Franciscan order. She was beatified in 1693 and canonized in 2013. Francis pointed out that as people living in today's society, we can understand the temptation to increase our sense of self-worth by accumulating money, fame, or power. Striving to possess more and more, she became more and more self-centered. When she realized she was priceless because she was created and loved by God, she became very gentle and charitable to the poor. So I think this is something that all of us, just as women living in today's age, we can kind of relate to is how do I know myself more through the eyes of God so that I'm looking to him for recognition and looking to him for my value as opposed to being that pull of the world that we so often see. So as Kathleen said, we are looking at this information through the book, The Temperament God Gave You, that is written by Art and Lorraine Bennett. So the 4 temperaments that we're going to use are actually ancient descriptions of temperament. So you're going to find that they're very ancient type words. And they've just done a very beautiful job of bringing these 4 temperaments into the modern world and giving us description. So we're going to look through sanguine, choleric, phlegmatic, and melancholic. And so at this point in our talk, those are not going to mean very much to you. But as we go through, we're going to start to bring some definition to what those temperaments are. I'm going to run tonight as part talk and part workshop. Nobody needs to hear me talk for an hour and a bit. What I do want to do is give you some time to be able to implement the knowledge that you've accumulated up to the point of visual worksheet. If you did not receive the worksheet, don't worry, I actually have it up as slides for you. And so you will be able to access the questions that way. When we have a question, you're welcome to stay in the Zoom meeting and work silently. Just you can turn your camera off. You'll already be muted. I'm really going to challenge all of you just to work on the reflection questions and give yourself this time to see how God desires to work in your life. I know it's so easy and tempting. I'm going to give you somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes, depending on where we are time-wise in the talk. And it is very easy to think of the laundry that you need to get folded or some work that needs to be done, or to zone out and play your favorite phone on your game, or play solitaire. But I hope that you will give yourself just that gift of spending some time with yourself and God tonight to understand the person He created a little better and a little deeper. And so during, I know as women and as busy women, we don't often have time to have this reflection on ourselves or to even, really think of ourselves that much. And so I'm just going to really encourage you to take that time. So I have a caveat to start. We are going to look at knowing ourselves through the lens of temperament tonight. The idea of knowing ourselves through the lens of temperament or any other format. Some of you might have taken Myers-Briggs through work. There's so many different temperament tests on the internet or different ways of looking at temperament. But it is not to put ourselves or anybody else into a box. And it's not to look at ourselves only through this one measurement. But it's a way for us just to give us guideposts to understanding ourselves. As human beings, we don't like to be put in a box or think we are not unique. And some temperaments really don't like that. So the idea is really to see ourselves as a combination of natural wiring and life experience.
Hey, Tracy.
Yes.
Your video is off, so I can't see your beautiful face explaining these slides. Is that?
I think it's because I'm sharing my screen.
Okay.
However, you all saw how beautiful I looked at the beginning, so I'm just going to have to go with that. I'm sorry, Kathleen.
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to make sure you're aware.
Yeah, it's all that's allowing me to do. My screen okay though, right?
Yes.
Okay. Natasha, if you have a solution for me for that, I can implement it.
I just sent you a request to share your video.
Yeah, and that thing's popping up on my whole screen of my video, so. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it because I want to keep us moving along. Because as you guys are gonna figure out, I'm actually really long-winded, and so I've got a lot to cover. Typically when we're doing temperament, we could easily do like a whole weekend on temperament, and we're gonna condense it into this Cole's Notes version. So an equation that I really like to use is temperament. So that is our God-given temperament plus our life experience. So our life experience is everything that's happened to us. It is our family of origin. It is who we were friends with, where we went to school, what any of our life experiences have been, whether we've traveled, whether we've had any kind of faith formation. Our faith lives in itself is a life experience. Who our family members are. So really that's everything that's happened to us. And then God's grace, and that's what he pours into our life on a daily basis, and that's very individual for all of us, for all of our needs, and for what we individually need in our life. So again, that is unique. And all of that equals who we are in this moment. And so when we're thinking about this, we are looking tonight at one piece of this equation, and that is temperament. So that is very much our wiring. And our wiring usually doesn't change throughout the course of our lives. We are fundamentally gifted a temperament, and then our life experience and God's grace on top of that makes us all unique. Even within our temperaments, depending on our life experiences, our temperaments may present as very different. So just want to make sure that we're really enforcing this uniqueness piece, and that we're not going to start to walk around and go, oh, you're a choleric, and no, you're a sanguine, and have those incidences where we're putting people in a box or judging people on kind of some guidelines that we see, because there is that life experience and how God's working in their lives is very unique. So I just would like to go back to our quote. Our perfection certainly exists in knowing God and ourselves. Our world is seeking to understand self-confidence. Our faith and our church have the answer to those questions. Pop psychology has resulted in experiments of how we build self-esteem and self-confidence, and the experiments keep failing. So I don't think the US is that different from Canada or Canada from the US, where we saw that we went through a period of time where we wanted our children to have high self-esteem, and so we told them they were good at everything. Everybody got a medal for everything, and everybody was winners. And what we discovered out of that was that that didn't actually build more self-esteem. And so we've been on this quest of how do we discover, and how do we teach, and how do we build into people self-esteem. And really, St. Angela gave us the answer to this secret, is to know God and to know ourselves. To know the Creator and know his creation. And self-esteem or self-confidence come from a place of, I know my Creator intimately, and I know my strengths and weaknesses, and I am accepting of both. And that's a really important piece. I know my strengths and weaknesses. I am accepting of both. It is really easy to know our strengths, possibly. Some of us even struggle knowing our strengths, but it can be easier to know our strengths and our weaknesses. We tend to not accept those, right? So we can go two ways. We either all we see is our weakness and we don't accept our strength, or all we see is our strength and we don't accept our weakness. And that true self-esteem, that self-confidence that we're all looking for, is that ability to be able to say, I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses, and I'm good with both. Not saying that I'm going to accept my weaknesses, but saying I know myself well enough to know what they are, and I'm going to keep working on them. And I'm not going to beat myself up about it or be down on myself, but I am going to continue to work on it. A really great question. This is why do I want to know myself? And it really helps us to understand ourselves in relation to other people. It also helps me to understand others better and to be more successful with the people that I'm working with. It makes us better wives, sisters, friends, parents, and workmates. When people say to me, what benefit does knowing my temperament bring to my personal life? And really it gets pulled into every aspect of our life. Knowing my temperament has helped me to be a way better therapist. Knowing my temperament has helped me to be a way better wife. Knowing my husband's temperament, knowing my children's temperament has helped me to be a better wife and mother. I know I'm a better mother-in-law because I know myself. And I also know my son-in-laws really well as well and understand where they're coming from. And so it really has allowed me in all aspects of my life, not that I get it perfect for sure, but in all aspects of my life to be able to have success in my relationships. So this isn't about, oh, this is a great way to be a mom. And you're like, well, I'm not a mom, so this doesn't apply. It's like, no, this is just a great way to interact with our world. And, as Christians, our job is to bring Christ out into the world. And so as we bring Christ out into the world, we can, it just really helps us, or it helps us to know ourselves and to know others through that lens. Okay, so I'm going to take a breather there, and I'm just going to say, Kathleen and Natasha, if you have a couple seconds, do you want to try to figure out what our problem is, or do you want me just to keep going?
Well, I have a feeling it's our weather. We have a lot of wind going on down here in California. We've had extreme cold for us and rain. So I think it's just a good old-fashioned internet. Natasha, can you see? I don't know if there's anything on your end since we're hosting this via Zoom and their site. So I think you should just go ahead.
Okay, and you guys are hearing me though, right?
Yes.
Yes.
It's just that there's kind of like a crackling sound behind it, but
Okay.
we can hear you and we can understand what you're saying. Is just the element of there's a bit of a crack.
Yeah, the quality's not that great. So
Okay.
yep. It's almost like you're skipping out a little bit.
Okay, that's not fun.
Do we have any high techies in the audience that have any suggestions?
Kathleen, one suggestion is for her to dial in via the phone versus using internet audio for her voice, and that might clear up the crackling.
That's a good solution. Tracy, I'll send you the dial-in.
Mm-hmm. Can you text it to me on my phone?
Yeah. Hold on for 1 second.
Thank you, Lucia, for that.
Spend way too much time on Zoom, ladies.
Yeah. Technically, I still want to see Tracy, but I can wish for next time. So Tracy, are you going to log off and then log back on?
No. She stays on. She just mutes her computer and just speaks through her phone.
Yeah. Look at that. You learn something new every day. Thank
Especially
you.
Just hold on for 1 second. I'm just getting the information.
Well, I'm more than happy to jump in and say I took the temperament quiz, and I can sum it up real easy by saying I am first in line for the party. So I came out as highly sanguine and choleric. Woo, I'm very delayed on my side too. But very awesome quiz. You're right, Tracy.
Okay, so Natasha is telling me to dial by location. It doesn't, they're just all US numbers. Is there,
Yeah.
should I just,
Let me just
okay, why don't, if you guys are okay with this, I'm going to try my ear pods and just my microphone on that and see if that comes through clearer.
It's already clearer now.
Is that clear? I just want to kind of keep everybody rolling. So can you guys hear me now?
I can hear you.
Now I hear the echo.
Yeah.
You're
A
good.
total echo. I hear
Okay.
two voices.
Okay, so how about that?
Unmute, turn down your computer.
Yeah, mute your computer.
Okay.
I just sent you the Canadian, the Canadian.
Much better.
Okay, is that good, you guys?
Yeah.
Still got the echo.
Okay, so I'm gonna phone in then, okay?
That sounds good now.
Yeah, the 587 is there.
You're good. On the
Okay.
side.
Go, girl.
All right.
Okay, so do you want me
Oh.
calling in or do you want me just to continue like this?
Continue.
Is that-
with that.
Continue. You're good.
And just a little tidbit for you. I found out that it is Saint Isidore is the patron saint of all things digital.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, that's good to know.
She needs to become her new favorite saint.
Dora, well, we asked for intercession.
Oh.
Okay. And is my video up now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm a very animated speaker, you guys. So now you're going to see my hands flying everywhere. Hopefully that's not distracting, but at least now I feel like I'm part of the group with you. Looking for our 4 temperaments, sanguine, choleric, phlegmatic, and melancholic. This is another place that I want to give you a little warning is that please don't check out if we're talking about a temperament that is different from yours. A key to successful relationships is to know ourselves and to know and understand those that are closest to us. Listening to the different temperaments, just think of someone that you're close with that actually fits that description. And then taking that in a way to know and understand them a little bit differently. Another point to keep in mind is that there are no temperament that is better than the other. The room probably just did an inside nod, but actually we do have the best temperament. But there is no better there's no temperament that is better than any other. God needs all 4 of our temperaments to do his mission here on earth. You're going to see that have different strengths and weaknesses. And when you see that and that ability to work together, you'll understand why we were all necessary. And so part of tonight is I want you to embrace your temperament. It is so easy for us to see our weaknesses, but it's important for us to see our strengths as well. Statement. The differences between temperaments often cause more agony than they really need to. Often when we are in conflict with someone or someone is driving us crazy and we're like, oh my goodness, like, why are you acting this way? Like, you are purposely trying to drive me crazy. Is really, they just look at it a different way. And so one of the benefits of knowing and understanding temperament is the ability to be able to get into someone else's shoes and go, oh, you're not doing that to be annoying. You're actually doing that because that's how you see the world. You're actually, that is, oh, you are seeing this very different than seeing it. And when we make that little switch, it's a little mind switch. And when we do that switch into, oh, I get it. I get how you're seeing the world. All of a sudden, we don't feel so threatened by someone else responding to us in a different way, or maybe not cooperating with us in the way that we think that they should. And we start to see the benefits of people looking at life through different lenses. Okay, so I want to start with the sanguine temperament. So for all of you who, I can't see you, but maybe you could just put your hands up for everybody else, who tested sanguine. Okay, so our sanguines tend to be sociable, outgoing, optimistic, confident, fun-loving, and they are very easy to forgive. On the flip side, if we look at our sanguine weaknesses, sanguines can be impulsive. They can often be late. Your sanguines will be your people that are showing up in the last moment. They can be self-centered. They tend to exaggerate. So our sanguines are people that tend to give us our fish stories, right? Like rather than the fish being this big, the fish is this big. And really what they're trying to do, it's not lying. It's actually they're trying to build some fun into the story. They're trying to expand the story and make it exciting and engaging. Because sanguines are just so involved with people and so involved in the fun and the excitement of what's going on, they can often be forgetful and miss some of those deadlines or some of those details. And they can be audacious in just that desire to entertain. Sometimes they can come off as a lot or just out there or wow, like they are super confident and I can't believe that they're doing what they're doing. But really what they're trying to do is engage with people. When we look at that sanguine temperament, that lens in which they look through life at is very much about relationship with other human beings and making life as fun and as engaging for others as they can. Okay. Let's take a look at the cleric temperament. So Kathleen did some self-disclosure. So she said she was cleric. I am the same. I'll do some self-disclosure. I am also cleric sanguine. And so maybe everybody who is cleric in the group, if you just want to put up your hand, if that came up as your number one. Okay. So our clerics tend to be ambitious. They tend to be planners and efficient and very efficient. So that lens of people and enjoyment and entertainment and engagement, clerics' first lens that they're going to look through life at is about efficiency. I actually have this great story. So I don't know if any of you have met Margaret Matthews, but she's a great friend up here in Calgary and does a lot of work with Reagan Christie throughout North America. And Margaret Matthews is a strong sanguine, and she's probably sanguine cleric. I'm cleric sanguine. And we moved into the same neighborhood. Margaret had lived in my neighborhood for a while. And I asked her one day, I just said, Margaret, like, what's the best way to get home? And she goes, oh, I just go the most beautiful way. And my brain is like, oh my goodness, how is that even an answer? Because for me, I'm looking at it from that view of what is the most efficient way home. The least amount of left-hand turns, the least amount of lights, like how do I get home the fastest? If you are ever driving with a cleric, you will notice that it is always a Formula One race because they are keeping track of where everybody is at. Because it's, did I pick the right lane? Did I pick the right light? Did I pick the right direction? And so that efficiency is important. Margaret actually taught me a lot that day. She doesn't even remember the conversation. This was 15 years ago, and it dramatically changed. Because I learned that day that there was another way to get home. I didn't have to go the most efficient way. I could go the most beautiful way. That is not the way my brain naturally works. I still automatically think what's the most efficient way, and then I have to override that with what is the most beautiful way. So you start to see how temperaments, how we can learn from other temperaments and see a different way of looking at life. That's my favorite story to tell. Clerics tend to be confident. They tend to be strong motivators, and they tend to take on leadership positions. The flip side, so the weakness side of clerics are they can be very demanding, a bit intolerant. They definitely are the people that are too busy. They're the people that have way too much on their plate and are juggling a lot of balls in the air. Can be impatient because most people aren't as efficient or are thinking about efficiency. Can be a bit tense and can sometimes be inflexible. And so I just laugh when I see this list because, yeah, like I'm all of them. But at the same time, you know, just looking at like how far like you can come with some information understanding around choleric, because when you look at that list, that makes it very difficult to be in relationship with people. And, you know, I think back to my beginning years of, you know, working with a girls group called Challenge. I think you guys have it down there too. I'm not sure if you have it in San Jose, but a challenge group up here in Calgary. And I know, like, I was so passionate about that girls group, but I was a steamroller in there. And I know at the beginning, I bowled a lot of women over in my great desire to have the most amazing girls club ever. And so I can really look at that list and go, yeah, I've come a long way, but these are still very much my natural tendencies. Okay, so everybody who tested phlegmatic, put up your hand.
Hey, Tracy, maybe I'm thinking you might want to call in because we're still getting a ton of choppiness, and it's unfortunately just very distracting from your wonderful presentation. So I'd rather us take a moment or so to do this correctly, so we can do this well.
Okay, sounds good.
Natasha, she has what she needs.
Yeah, she does. Did you get the text that I sent you? The number is 587-328-1099.
I'm not sure if everybody knows this, for all you local folks, that Santa Clara County jumped down to the purple tier. Yay! So as of the 25th. So I thought I'd just up to date you on a quick COVID status.
That means hairdressers are open, y'all.
That's
Oh.
right. I'm open for business now.
St. Isidore, come on. We're calling in you, calling a favor now.
Looks like hers is still on mute. Tracy.
Tracy, are you on mute? She might be on mute because she's going to try to dial in.
Okay.
Nothing like a few moments. Just when we're getting to the good stuff.
Right. The wind's really picking up out there.
I think she's coming on. Okay, just hold on.
All right. Are you back with us, Tracy?
Just hold on.
I'm sorry. Does anybody know any good jokes?
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, great.
Okay. I'm just going to turn you off and just make sure, is that good? Because I'm getting a double echo, so I'm just going to have to turn you guys all off.
Hi, Tracy, turn off the volume. Turn down the volume on your computer.
Yeah. Okay, so is that good?
You sound good so far.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I just caught a couple of the chats. I love it. Like, are there any Bernie memes to share? Love it. If anybody wants to put Bernie sitting next to me, that would be awesome. And, oh yeah, someone said, all the clerics in the room are trying to problem solve. And I'm just sitting here going, I don't know what to do. So here we are. Okay, so I'm going to go back and start with phlegmatic. Can I just get a positive that my screen is back up?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so everybody who is phlegmatic, put your hand up again. Great. Okay, so our phlegmatic people are calm, loyal, and diplomatic. Our phlegmatic people are really our peacemakers. They are the people that just come in and smooth up all the rough edges. They tend to be content, accepting, and reasonable. So your phlegmatic person is actually the person that you want in a crisis like this, sitting next to me going, you know what, Tracy, it's really just going to be okay. And so the phlegmatic people are amazing team members. You know, it's really interesting. We have, you know, obviously priests come in all shapes and forms, but there's actually a lot of priests that are phlegmatic, and it's really surprising for people because they end up being leaders or leaders of their parish or have to run their parish. And sometimes phlegmatics are put into that reluctant leadership role because they are just so good at bringing peace and calm to a situation. So the weakness side of a phlegmatic temperament is they can be self-effacing, not necessarily really seeing their own strengths and seeing what they bring to a team. We live in a society that is very much focused on leadership and not necessarily focused on the other benefits that other temperaments kind of bring to a team. And so just being able to really understand as a phlegmatic what your strengths are and how much strength you bring to life and to a team, whether that's a family team or a work team, is really important. It can be passive, and that is more just that desire not to lead and wanting to feeling stronger in a backup position, feeling stronger, kind of working behind the scenes, and a lot of times can actually just, you know, I'll always be pointing to other people and being able to say that, oh, they can make that decision. I'm kind of good with anything. If you've got a phlegmatic friend, there's a friend that really is good with everything, or if you have a phlegmatic spouse, like really just great with everything, which can be a strength and it can be a weakness. And I think that's a really important thing for all of us to realize in the context of any of our strengths and weaknesses for any of our temperaments, is that we always just kind of think that it's strengths on this side and weaknesses on this side. And a lot of times it's not that. It's our greatest strength out of balance becomes our greatest weakness, right? And so we could look at something and we can go, okay, if you're a very charitable person, or let's say a generous person with your time, then that generosity is is very much a strength. But then out of balance, it becomes a weakness, and maybe you're not around for your family at all. Or maybe you're not there for like the really important things in life because you're giving to other people. So it's not so much that we're looking at strengths and weakness, strengths over here and weaknesses over here. It's really a lot of our strengths out of balance become our greatest weakness. Phlegmatics also will avoid conflict. If you have any friends or family members or workmates or anybody who avoid conflict, there's a really high chance that phlegmatics will go to a lot of work to avoid conflict. The hard part is it usually creates more conflict. They can be indecisive because they want to please everybody. Can be permissive because, again, they're not really sure. They want everyone to be happy, and that's just a really hard thing to do. You just can't make everybody happy. And they can come across as apathetic in that thing of, maybe I just feel like I don't care enough about anything to make a decision, but that's really not the case. The case is they're more concerned about the peacemaking than they are concerned about anything else. Am I still there?
Yes, you are.
Doing great.
Perfect. It just got really quiet, so I lost a lot of static all of a sudden. So, okay, our last temperament, melancholic. Can I get all the melancholics to put up their hands, please? Okay. So our strengths for our melancholics is they tend to be very thoughtful and think a lot about how other people will react to situations and how their actions impact somebody else. In that same frame, they tend to be very considerate. They're organized. If you want anything organized, go find yourself a melancholic. Melancholics really look at the world through that lens of perfection and organization, where a choleric has a different kind of organized. So a choleric's going to look at it through efficiency. A melancholic is going to look at it through perfection. And to get the right answer, the choleric's going to say, get the quickest answer. And the melancholic is going to err on the side of, let's get this right from the start. They tend to be very detail oriented. So these are the people that you want editing something or looking through the nitty gritty. You do not want me editing everything. I'm going to take a brief look at it and I'm going to say, wow, that was great. Get started. A melancholic is going to be detailed. They're going to think through the process, very process orientated. And so anything that requires detail, they are the people for the job. They tend to be very self-reliant. Again, that's an interesting one in that sense of self-reliance can be a strength, but then out of balance, it can be a weakness because you don't ask for help when you need it. But self-reliance can be a real positive in that sense of they don't need a whole team to get started. A melancholic child is going to go and get something started without that help, and that feels really good from a parent perspective. A melancholic worker is actually going to be like very self-motivated themselves and be able to work independently. And reliable. If you want someone to show up and be there for you, that really is that melancholic person. So on the flip side, our weaknesses of our melancholic temperament is they can be a little bit moody. And that is more just, it's like it fluctuates more with the success that they're seeing in the world. Or they're seeing in what they're doing. And so moody, not in the sense of like, how do I say it? Like moody, and then necessarily in the way that we would use the word moody, but it really is very much that how successful their project is or how successful they're seeing whatever they're working on will determine whether they're happy or sad. It's not for no reason, is what I was trying to say. Can be discontent. I was going to say the melancholic temperament is going to love heaven more than the rest of us, for sure, because it's finally the place where you get perfection. Melancholics tend to find a lot of discontent with the world because it's not perfect. People aren't perfect. Situations aren't perfect, and life on earth is a bit messy. And so you are going to love that perfection that exists in heaven. Melancholics can be perfectionists. And so sometimes that means that you end up getting stuck and not started on something just because you want it to be perfect and some things just need to start. They can have that pessimistic view. If you ever want like a pros and a cons list and a well-balanced pros and cons list, you want a melancholic to be a part of that pros and cons list. Melancholics are good troubleshooters in the sense of being able to figure out what is going to, like what the problems in a project are going to be. But then sometimes that's all they focus on. And so that can come across as a pessimistic viewpoint. And so if you're melancholic, you just need to figure out ways to rephrase that so that it doesn't seem pessimistic. It actually seems like you are troubleshooting, proactively troubleshooting. Can have tunnel vision. So your melancholic is a great heads down person, get the work done, but sometimes they can get so kind of zoned in that they don't see the big picture and can be intense. And again, that just fits with that perfectionist piece. So you will see that all of the temperaments have strengths and weaknesses, and that we are all working within those strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, like it's a part of, this is the part of knowing ourselves that becomes so important. And it's not to get caught up in our weaknesses, but also not to get caught up in our strengths. And again, back to that, true humility is that we know our strengths and our weaknesses, and that we have that balanced approach to ourselves. So what I want to do right now is I just want to give you guys 10 minutes. So that'll take us right till 9 o'clock. And I know it's pushing our time just a little bit, but I'm going to blame that on the technology issues. But I just would like you to take a look at the questionnaire that you got. And just take some time. This is actually the questionnaire that's up on my screen right now. And so if you didn't get the handout, you can actually just do the questions and just take some time to reflect on all of these questions. You're not going to get through it all. And so you decide how you want to do it. Like if you want to do short notes, if you want to just hone in on one question and do it, this is your time to think about yourself and to really have that time of reflection. And yeah, if you have your printout from your temperament test, then you're going to have some of those strengths and weaknesses in there. But hopefully just from some of the things that we talked about, you actually were able to pluck a couple of little pieces of wisdom out of there. And so we will see you back here in 8 minutes now. So at 9 o'clock, and we'll just give you a chance to go through this worksheet.
Perfect, Tracy. Again, everybody, we will provide the links for the quiz, a link for the books. There's several books that were written for the temperaments, depending on children, relationships, spouses, single person, and also the handout. Tracy, I'm hoping also we can get a copy of your slides or a version of the slides. I especially liked the opposite side of what each of the temperament was. That really spoke volumes, particularly to me, about the pros and the cons maybe of each temperament. Would that be possible?
Yeah, the weaknesses. Yeah, I will absolutely share the entire presentation with you, and then you can distribute it out to all of the ladies that participated for sure.
And then do you recommend maybe doing small, again, maybe this will just springboard women into, of course, going deeper into the temperaments, but doing, I know that these books have like little book studies for like small groups of women to get together. How did you recommend maybe that part of it also?
Yeah, like I think, like I'm not sure here, Kathleen. I think everybody can hear us, and I really wanted them to be able to
Be quiet.
just concentrate on their own stuff. But maybe I will just chat with you on chat.
Ladies, just wanted to let you know that Tracy, we could see your chat box.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Kathleen and I'll talk after. There's lots of great ideas. I want you guys to concentrate on really what you, just yourselves right now. Okay, so we just have 1 minute left if you want to start to wrap up your thoughts and get ready to come back. Okay, are we a go, Kathleen? Do we have everybody back?
As far as I can see, everybody is still here.
Awesome. Okay, I hope that, I know it's a really short period of time, but I hope it gave you just a little bit of a taste of what it means to just have a few moments to think about yourself and to think about how you're interacting in the world and how you're interacting with God and those people that are in your life in whatever kind of stage or state of life that you're in right now. And just the benefits of having that time just to think about ourselves. We just don't have that much opportunity as women in the world to do that. And so I hope this just really gives you a little taste of it and that you take some time for yourself, whether it's throughout the week, the rest of this week, into the weekend, to kind of look at some of these questions and to really ask yourself, or, set some time aside every week, even if it's just like 15 minutes, to kind of go through this and ask some of those questions so that you can really get to know yourself better. One of the ways that we can really teach others about ourselves is when we know ourselves. It's really hard to teach about ourselves if we don't know ourselves that well. So, we want other people in the world to understand us better. And part of the way that we help them to do that is by knowing ourselves and by sharing that with other people. So we've kind of got 2 slides left, and then we're going to do a bit of a wrap up. And so I really want to go through relationship needs because we're all in relationship with people, all different kinds of people. And so I think it's really important that we know and understand what the different temperaments need. So for all those sanguines in our lives, and I was able to look at the chat at the end, and someone posted the sanguines have wine, and you're probably absolutely right, and are enjoying themselves tonight. Those sanguine people in our life really need approval and acceptance. They need our attention. My sanguine daughter, it drives her crazy if I am multitasking when she's talking to me. And I'm like, don't worry, honey, like I've got it covered. Like I can listen to you and do this and probably do a couple other things. She's like, but I want your attention, right? And so if you've got a sanguine person in your life, they're the people that you put down your phone, you put down, whatever else you're doing, and you actually give them that one-on-one attention. Sanguines always also love affection. So those are those girlfriends that are giving you a hug. If you have someone in the office that hugs everybody, there's a really high chance that they are sanguine. And they're looking for that connection, right? And so again, that sanguine temperament is looking at life through that, how do I connect with other people? And yeah, so those are some of the things that they need. If we look at the choleric people in your life, loyalty is very important to them. They want to know that you're going to be there for them. It doesn't matter what happens, you can work through it. They like to have a sense of control. So it doesn't mean you have to give them a sense of control or give them control. You want to give them a sense of control. You want them to have a say in a piece of something or own something, right? And so, if your family's organizing something and you've got a choleric child, you really want to give them a sense of control in a piece of them. Give them something that they are responsible for. Same with workmates. Like if you've got someone that you're working with, that is choleric, it's like they might not have control over the whole project, but give them that they have a sense of control over a piece of it. You're going to pull out the best in them if they have that sense of control. Clerics love being appreciated for their work, and just want to hear that they've done a good job and like that credit for their work. So they are not the people that you want to leave out on a presentation and, oh, shoot, I forgot their name on there. You can leave a phlegmatic person's name out, but you want to be giving that cleric, like, great job, and just very specific with how you are giving them credit for work. If these are students or children in your life, you really want to be pointing out to them very specifically what they've done well. Just a good job is usually not going to cover it for them. They're going to want more detail in what they actually did to have a good job. For our phlegmatic friends and family, they really need that harmony. They do not like conflict. You know, they are not the people that want to debate. They do not want to talk about confrontational topics. And so, you know, thinking about that when you're setting either family gatherings up or work meetings up or things like that, is that how do you give them that sense of harmony? They really like having that feeling of worth, and that it's really important to them that they know that they matter in the world and that they matter to you. Phlegmatics just trying to keep their world as stress-free as possible. You are not going to see their strengths come out if they are in a stressful situation. What you're going to see is a lot of shutdown if they are in a stressful situation. So if you see a phlegmatic that is stuck, it's usually because they are overstressed or there's too much conflict in the situation. Because they are so loyal, it's important to them that they have your respect. A lot of times it can be really easy, just because they're so easygoing, just to not give them that respect and to just kind of see they'll just go with the flow. But it is an important, you know, just part of their life that they actually are respected by the people that are around them. And so you might just have to pay a little bit more attention to that phlegmatic voice. They're not going to be the loudest voice in the room, but they still want that respect of being heard. For the melancholics that are in our life, it's really important for them that they feel safe in their environment. We are going to get the best out of them when they feel safe in their environment and secure. Sensitivity is really important. When a melancholic is dealing with another person, they really take a look at all angles and they don't want to hurt somebody else. And so they tend to be very hurt when people don't pay attention to the things that are important to them. And so if you have a melancholic in your life, get to know them really well and, you know, really find out what is important to them. And when you do those things, it is going to mean a lot to them. Melancholics like lots of support. They want to be able to talk through the pros and cons and to talk about the possibility that things aren't going to go right, and just to have that support, to know that people are there, even maybe if they don't ask for help, because when we talked about that self-reliant piece, but it is really important to them that they do have that support around them. And then just giving them space and silence. We kind of didn't go through the introverted, extroverted thing, but your choleric and your sanguine are going to be much more extroverted. Your phlegmatic and your melancholic are going to be more introverted, with the melancholic temper being the most introverted. And they tend to need a lot of space and silence just to kind of figure out their thoughts. And so one of the things that you can really give a melancholic is the time to process and to think. They want to give you the right answer, and they're not going to give that to you quickly. And so if you're a choleric up against a melancholic, that's going to be a tough sell, because that choleric wants quick and that melancholic wants space. And so just looking at that and saying, how do I give those melancholics in my life some space and some silence to be able to process? It's also really important actually for both phlegmatic and melancholic people to have some time to themselves and to have downtime. Those cholerics and sanguines don't need as much downtime, but phlegmatics and cholerics do tend to need more downtime. I've really had to learn that as a mom. I've got 3 phlegmatic girls, which I don't know, God's working on me for sure. And I've learned so much from them of just slowing down in life, and I can run circles around them, and I can wear them out. And holidays cannot be fun because I've got so much stuff packed in. And so I've really had to learn to give my melancholic girls just some space, and they've taught me a lot about slowing down in life. Okay, this is one of my favorite things. It's one of my favorite things about the book. So the book is amazing. I hope, if not all of you, you have a chance to look at it. It's got some great chapters in there. So it's got a chapter on spouse combinations and how they work, which is so great. It's got combinations on parent-child. So if you're a choleric parent with a phlegmatic child, like what actually helps with that. But it's got this great chapter on motivation. And I really love it because I think all of us, no matter our temperaments, we're working with other people, and therefore we are really trying to motivate others, right? We all want to be successful. None of us wake up in the morning and go, how do I have the worst day possible? We are all trying to have the best day possible with whatever's going on. And so just really understanding how to motivate other temperaments is a really important part of doing life. So both the sanguine and the phlegmatic temperaments tend to be externally motivated. And then we have our cholerics and our melancholics that tend to be internally motivated. Sanguines tend to love other people's projects, love getting on board, but they also absolutely love trying to sell their project to you and to get you on board for theirs as well. It's great if you're trying to motivate a sanguine person to tie rewards to it. These are the kids that do great with sticker charts. They're the person at the exercise studio that has signed up and is hitting all the tick marks for like 5 days in a row at the club. They love rewards. Making things fun is, just really important. If you want to clean the house, put on music. Really put on music for anything that you want to do with a sanguine, but you really just want to make it fun. And they're probably going to need some help with a plan for something. They have a ton of good ideas. They are your party planner. They might need help with the execution part. Once people start showing up and they start engaging with people, there's a really high chance that they are going to forget about what all the plans were because they're having so much fun engaging with people. Cholerics, what you want to do is actually set the right goal. You need to slow cholerics down a little bit when you're trying to motivate them, but you don't want to slow them down too much where they feel like there's red tape in front of them all the time, but you do want to make sure that they haven't just hit the ground running and don't know what the plan is anymore. Presenting a challenge to a cleric is a great idea. Okay, I'll come back to this. Yeah, like making it a challenge, making it a goal, making it a competition is going to motivate a cleric. So who can bring in the most things for the food bank? Those clerics are just going to be bringing in a ton of stuff, right? Especially if there's some kind of chart on the wall that tells who's bringing what in, they're going to be on that. It's really important for clerics to have a reason for your request, things that they're doing and where they're spending their time so that they can spend their time efficient. It is important for them to know what they're working towards. I did have some motivating comments for each of the temperaments for you. And so I'm going to go back to that sanguine one. So some motivating comments are, wow, that's really exciting. I love your ideas. Let's work on this together. Let's go to Starbucks and write up a proposal, make a timeline, and set up a schedule. So they were not going to necessarily sit down at the kitchen table to do that, unless there's wine, but you want to make it fun. I really learned with my sanguine daughter, rather than like to bring, when she would give us great ideas, I would start to tell her like the realities of the situation. What I really learned to say with her was, that sounds great, honey. Like, why don't you tell me what the next steps are when you have figured them out? And so hardly anything happened of her good ideas But she had a ton of them, and it was very enjoyable, and she had a good time thinking them all up. Where we ran into trouble is she now has a cleric husband, and he can make all of her dreams come true. And so we've had to be a little bit more discerning about what we say yes to. Okay, some motivating comments for the cleric is, your idea is great. I think your plan will save the company, but let's make sure this is the right goal before we get started. Let's brainstorm some good ideas and then run them by the team. Clerics love brainstorming. If you want to get a cleric invested in a family trip or anything like that, get them invested in the brainstorming part and the ideas part. How many toys can you pick up in the next 10 minutes? Or turning it the other way around and go, I bet you can't clean this room up in 10 minutes, or I can pick up more toys than you in 10 minutes. And so giving them those challenges, and obviously you guys can take that and translate that into the workforce as well. Okay, so our phlegmatics tend to be externally motivated as well. You really want to walk alongside phlegmatics. They really love that team approach. So asking a phlegmatic to go out and do their own thing, you're not going to get a whole lot of buy-in. They're going to feel a little bit discouraged. And so just walking alongside of them is very important. Giving lots of encouragement. You do not want to nag a phlegmatic. And I want you to really think about that if you have phlegmatic spouses, phlegmatic children, or phlegmatic workmates or friends. Is that nagging is the thing that brings them down the most. So providing those words of encouragement of what they are doing, not what they're not doing. We want to build confidence in phlegmatic people. And one of the ways you can do that is by reviewing past successes and then building off of those. So being able to say, like, do you remember when you did this last time? And then they're going to go, oh yeah, I actually can do this, right? And so when you can build off those past successes, you start to build confidence in themselves. And you want to provide some of that accountability because they don't like conflict. When they forget to do something, they may just let it continue to slide because they actually don't know how to get back on track, but don't want to have the conflict of letting you know that. And so creating some built-in accountability so that they can be successful. Some motivating comments for a phlegmatic is, you are a key player in this project. I'm so impressed with your work in this very specific area. Again, phlegmatics, if you just say, oh, you're doing a great job, it really doesn't mean a whole lot to them because they actually don't know what you mean. Whereas if you can say, like, you are you've been really great at putting this project together, that's not very specific, but you could be more specific, then that's great. Let's set some timelines to measure your progress. That is going to help them see their success as well. And so that is going to help them be more confident. And let's talk about some ideas you might have for the future. They're really going to need that encouragement to actually get their ideas out on the table. Again, they've got that nervousness of they want to make everybody happy. And so giving them a real open way of saying that it's safe to tell me what your dreams and hopes are. And I'm not going to just put them down, or I'm not going to, as a cleric, come up with a whole bunch of solutions, or as a melancholic, tell you all the things that could go wrong with that. It's just giving them a really safe place where they could have ideas to the future. So finally, our melancholic temperament is, again, very internally motivated. They have very high and noble goals. So you really want to talk to melancholic temperament about those high and noble goals and why, what is the really big picture on this, right? And have it tied to something that is important, whether it's important to the environment, important to family life, important to the company, but they really need to see that high and noble goal. If it's just for no real reason, you're probably not going to get their buy-in very much. They may need a kickstart, and this is where that perfectionist piece comes in that we talked about earlier, is that a melancholic is not going to want to release a project or release, like any kind of project, or get things started unless they feel like they can do it perfectly. And we all know that a lot of things just need to happen, and then we sort out it as we go. And so a melancholic person to be motivated is really going to need that kickstart of it's okay, and yes, mistakes are going to happen or things are going to happen, but we're going to solve this together. Recognizing their talent and skills is vital, and again, being very specific about their talent and skills. And then again, acknowledging the obstacles. They've got really super valid points about the obstacles, right? But those other three temperaments are going to want to look on the more positive side and not look at the obstacles. And a lot of times what we do when we're talking to melancholic people is we're trying to flip it and go, well, let's look at this positively. Where in their brains, they're seeing all the things that could go wrong. So what actually helps motivate them is to give them some space and for you to acknowledge those obstacles and then go, now what can we do, right? As opposed to just denying, oh, let's just think of the happy side. And they're not even paying attention to you anymore because they're going, no, because these other things can happen. Right? So acknowledging the obstacles and then helping them to move on to, okay, but let's get started anyway. And the skills of the team will keep us moving forward, whether that's the skills of a family or whether that's the skills of a workplace or a volunteer project. But if we don't acknowledge the skills, then they just think that we're out to lunch. Okay, I hope that part was really helpful as well with working with other people. Obviously, when we look at temperament, one of the things that we really concentrate on is working on our weaknesses. And I get that question a lot. It's like, well, okay, my strengths are great, like I can keep using those, but like, what about working on my weaknesses? Like that's the part of my temperament that is going to get me into trouble or get me into sticky situations. And so I want to end our evening tonight just on a positive note of keeping our eyes on Christ. And so the way we keep our eyes on Christ is by building virtue. And it's that building virtue around the weakness of our temperament that is going to help us to use our strengths more and not have our weaknesses show up so much in life. So some of the benefits of building virtue is that when we work on one virtue, we are working on all the virtues, which I love. Again, it's that efficiency perspective for my brain. But it is very much that, if I'm going to work on generosity, I'm also probably going to grow in gentleness, and I'm also going to grow in patience, and I'm going to grow, obviously, in generosity as well. But I might be better at giving people the benefit of the doubt. So you really see that when you start to build virtue and work on virtue, all of a sudden we're more virtuous in a whole bunch of areas. So another reason is building virtue keeps us focused on Christ and not on our weaknesses. It's really easy for us to pick apart ourselves, to pick apart the parts that, we don't like or that, cause us those sticky situations in the world, the messy parts of our life. And when we start to look at virtue and that process of building virtue, it really allows us to keep our eyes on Christ and how he sees us and how he wants us to grow. He knows we're messy. It's why he died on the cross for us, is because he knew we were going to be messy. And so he doesn't he doesn't reject us because of our messiness. He says, come, walk with me, and we'll clean up your messiness as we walk. But we're not just going to stand here and clean up your messiness. We're going to walk through life with you with that messiness. And it's the piece for us that is so important, is we don't get bogged down in those weaknesses, that we look at it and flip it and say, okay, Lord, I'm going to do this walk with you, building virtue, and my eyes are going to be on you and not turned inward. And finally, building virtue helps us to serve others. So the more virtue we build, again, the less inward we're looking, the more outward we're looking, the more we are there to serve others, the less we are thinking about ourselves. I kind of go back to the very start of our presentation when we were talking about St. Angela, and You know, when she was looking to build wealth and popularity and all the things of the world, she was very self-centered and took care of herself. And when she saw what her worth was in Christ, she was able to look outwards and really started to see how she could serve other people. And that brought that true happiness to herself. And so, yeah, I'm just going to really encourage you to look at that from a virtue perspective. We're not going to talk about this slide because we're really out of time, but you will get this as part of your presentation. And so just in case you're not sure where to kind of start with the temperaments, here's like a little bit of a cold notes version of the different temperaments and some of the places that you could actually start. If any of you have spiritual directors or spiritual guides, that is another place where you could start to look. Also, just in your own personal prayer, sitting down with Christ and just going, Lord, where do you want me to work? Where do you want to grow? Where do you want to work in my life? Will give us a good idea. If you go to confession, some of the things that you bring up in confession all the time are some of the things that you could counteract with virtue. So that's another place where you could start to look at which virtues you could start to work on. So you will all get a copy of this, so it'll give you a little bit of a nudge in a direction. That is it for our presentation tonight. I feel like that was a whirlwind with some technology issues as well. And yeah, I hope this has been helpful, and I think we're going to turn it back to Kathleen and maybe open up some questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And again, thank you everyone for being patient with our technical challenges. Just can you quickly just touch on virtues? Because I'm like looking at my phone, I'm like, oh my gosh, what are the virtues again? I'm totally like blanking out here. So can you give us an example of a couple of virtues and how that would play into it while we get some questions?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, we could just kind of go back to our list. I mean, you know, like there's key virtues, but if anybody just Googles a virtue list, you're going to come up with a lot. There are a lot of virtues. We always think of like the big virtues, like humility and patience and charity. But the reality of it is, in some of those really big virtues, that's a lot of work. Like, I'm going to really recommend nobody works on patience. That is way too big. But if we break patience down and look at it and say, what if in wanting patience, I was more compassionate, or I was more gentle, or I was more forgiving? Then now we've got virtues that are a little bit on a smaller scale, where we can start to look and say, how does that apply to my life in every single moment, right? And so there are, I saw a list the other day that was like 52 virtues. So you will have a list that will come with the presentation that is, so perseverance, temperance, commitment, reliability, generosity, trustworthiness, intimacy with Christ, perseverance, orderliness. Like, really, the list is endless in lots of ways.
I'm looking at some questions here. Does anybody have a question for Tracy?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
What if you're a split between two of the virtues? I mean, not virtues, sorry. Temperaments.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we didn't get to talk about at all is our secondary temperament. And so all of us have a secondary temperament. You guys heard me say that I'm choleric sanguine. And, you know, really, again, like, this is where we don't want to put ourselves into a box. So it's looking at it and saying, is there one that is more dominant for you? Some people are really close, like their numbers are almost exactly the same. And then what you want to do is really just take a look at those strengths and weaknesses and say, where do they play out in my life, right? So I might have more strengths in the choleric department and more of my weaknesses show up in the sanguine department, right? And so just being able to look at it that way, and again, just not getting caught up in just picking one, is that most of us have, like, we all have a secondary, well, I shouldn't say we all, because some people are just very strong, but most of us have a secondary temperament. Does that help? Is there another part of that question?
Yeah, it's funny, like when I look through all of them, I can find myself in just about all of them, but definitely there's a more dominant one. Well, two for me. I'm pretty close for choleric and melancholic. They're pretty close. Yeah, that makes sense to see where it plays out in your life, and then, that's
and that's a very common combination. I mean, if all of us look at all of the characteristics of all four temperaments, we're all going to have pieces of all four temperaments, right? God has created us to be fairly well-rounded. And so we are going to see ourselves in all the temperaments. It really is just figuring out what's dominant, and also just being able to look at it and go, what is my core temperament, right? Sometimes when we've had formation or we've done a lot of personal development and we've worked on those weaknesses, we don't necessarily see ourselves in those weaknesses anymore. But if you take us and put us in a stressful situation, like I would say I'm a fairly patient person right now, but you put me in a stressful situation and boy, boom, I am like full control mode. No patience, everybody will do it my way, because that's the core of who I am, right?
Okay.
I have a question. So the top two, the choleric and sanguine, were typically extroverts, and the others were introverted. But then when it came to motivation, it was the left one. It was the sanguine and was it the melancholic there? Or yeah, that was externally motivated, and the others were internally motivated. Can you just talk about the difference between extrovert, introvert, and then externally motivated and internally motivated?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's actually so externally motivated are your sanguine and phlegmatic, and then in motivation-wise, again, sanguine and phlegmatic are externally motivated. So the difference between those, so internally motivated, like when it comes to strengths and weaknesses, is that, okay, sorry. Ask me a question again. I lost my train of thought.
The question is basically, what's the difference between extrovert and externally motivated?
Oh, yeah, okay. So extrovert is more about like people and the amount of energy that other people take from us, right? So if we're extroverts, we tend to get energy from people. And so being around people is something that is energizing. If you are introverted, it tends to be that if you are around people, then people tend to suck your energy a little bit more, right? So it's more of a, you probably need more silence, need a little bit more self-reflection, need more time to yourself. And so phlegmatic and melancholic people tend to do a little bit more themselves, need that downtime, want that downtime, and need a break from people. Choleric and melancholic tend to get way more energy from people, and so they're actually happier being around people, and that's how they will recharge. Whereas phlegmatics and melancholics really need to be alone to recharge. When we look at the motivation piece, internally motivated means that I can actually get my desire to do something from myself, right? And so I can give myself a kick in the butt myself and get myself started. And I have a natural tendency to be able to do that. So cholerics and melancholics are internally motivated, and so they don't often need a rah-rah to get started. Sanguine and phlegmatics are more externally motivated. And so what they need to do is they're going to need someone to come along and kind of give them the rah-rah to get started, right? So they're going to need a cheerleader, or they're going to, need someone to kind of walk along beside them.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Any more questions? More questions from anybody?
Well, I was thinking of the examination of conscience. It sounds like our weaknesses would be a good way to go to confession, to reflect before confession. So we could make a better examination of conscience and better confession and bring a better awareness with our priest or our confessor or spiritual director to help us walk through those things. So
Yes. Yeah.
see it that way?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, that is just about knowing ourselves. Like when we're doing our examination of conscience, it really is about, like, do I know myself well enough to actually even do that examination? In my strengths and my weaknesses, because again, we want it to be a balance. It's not a beat me up session at the end of the day. It's like my balance, right? And it's the same with going to confession. Is like, do I actually know myself? And if I know myself, I can actually start to get to the root of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yes. And that's always good. That's always
Ego. Ego. What? What?
Yeah.
Who said that?
Yeah.
You made a very good point, Tracy, about confession, spiritual director, helping you kind of peel back that onion per se, but really begin to understand both sides of that coin of your temperament. But I really liked that you work through this through your virtues, because that perpetuates the goodness of other areas. And being a very sanguine, choleric person myself, I was like, okay, I gotta do patience. I'm up top. I'm taking the big one. I'm taking the whole, enchilada. And I really appreciate you saying, let's break it down into kindness and grace and kind of those micro victories that make up patience per day. Because as many people, if you have a coworker via Zoom, or you have a teenager who's living in your house who's never leaving because of the COVID, or your husband, or whatever, that these temperaments can be applied and understanding in rich depthness to everybody. And it's a progress. Like you said, it's a real, it's a work in progress. This will take a while to get the muscle memory of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a journey, right? And as Christians, it's our life journey. Like there is not going to be a time, I don't think, where, we're going to say, hey, I arrived. We all have our stuff to work with. And, I just look at my own life, and, I've had generosity as my program of life for lots of years. And every time I want to take it away and, I'm going, oh, Lord, like I've got this nailed, like no problem. Here I am again, and God's peeling it back a little bit more and say, but what about this? Like, what about a benefit, the doubt for people, right? And he's always just stripping it back a little bit more. And so I think if we're always seeking God, we're going to be seeking and looking, and he's going to be like calling us like to that growth. And I had a priest once say to me, oh, you guys know Father Sean Aaron. So Father Sean said to me, you know what, Tracy, our hearts are always at whatever size they are. And God knows how big that our hearts need to be to receive him in heaven and receive that love in its fullest. And so our whole life is going to be a journey of growing our hearts. And, when we build virtue, we are growing our hearts. And how we build virtue is to know ourselves, right?
Amen. Anybody else have a question they wanted to unmute themselves and ask Tracy?
I have one more. Does it happen often that you start out in one dominant temperament, and then later on in life it gets switched to another one? Like, can you change? And does that happen in your experience?
So I would say not typically, but it's more, how did you identify your dominant before and maybe your dominant now? And again, it's taking it back to just temperament. If you go back to our equation, is that our equation was temperament plus life experience plus God's grace equals who we are today. So we may look at ourselves today and go, oh, I'm not the same temperament, but it's because of that life experience and God's grace and our growth that we maybe don't see the weaknesses in that original temperament, right? But it doesn't mean that our core hasn't changed. Now, having said that, I have seen like traumatic life experiences, like fundamentally alter the lens through which someone lives their life. And it can, again, look a bit like a temperament change. But I think if we actually stripped it all the way back, it would be that those life experiences just became so big that they were the ruling force. So sometimes when we feel like our temperaments change, we maybe didn't get it right the first time, or we don't have it right the second time.
Okay. I have a question here saying, I'm predominantly sanguine and choleric, but I would like to be more melancholic.
I'd like to be more phlegmatic.
So is that even a thing? Can you, or is that just being more mindful in just your behavior? Like you just, I don't know, like, or phlegmatic. Yeah. Can you be in a quadrant, want something out of the other quadrants?
So who we are, so here's the thing, right, is that God gave us a temperament and he wired us in a certain way to be in the world. And I guess it's a question of, do we want to be who we want to be, or do we want to be who God wants us to be? And do we believe that he made a mistake, or do we believe that he has a mission for us with the temperament that we had, or that he gave us, right? And I know we can all look at other temperaments and go, wow, that's a more appealing temperament. But just because it's more appealing doesn't mean that that's how we're going to interact with the world. So I think that it's a question of, obviously there's some like characteristics in the phlegmatic temperament that are appealing to you. And so looking at them and going, how do I grow some of those characteristics? But don't ignore the way that you naturally see the world through your eyes, because that's how God wants to work with you, and that's who he needs you to be in the world, right?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a great way to end. It is now 8:42 and we've had to go over, but Tracy, I just want to say a big thank you for spending an evening with us and just tipping the iceberg of the temperaments. I know you do bigger talks on this, and maybe we'll have to get you down here for that when everything clears up. We appreciate your insight and your knowledge in this area. It's fantastic talk. So
we could do like a weekend retreat on temperaments. It's so fun because you get to break into groups, and it's just a really great time.
Oh,
I would love that.
Love it. So I know that people would love it. We'd love to get back up to the.
Father will say yes at one point. Let's make a retreat.
Well, fantastic. So insightful. And again, everyone, we will make sure you'll be receiving an email with the quiz, link to the books, the worksheet, and I'll get a copy of Tracy's presentation also to include on this. And so insightful. I've learned so much great things tonight. One few last things again. We have 4 more talks coming up. We have the 5 love languages in February, the decision-making, Ignatian discernment in March, how we love in April, and the final one to wrap up in May is pilgrimages. our life pilgrimages, and a panel of women who have done pilgrimages, Catholic pilgrimages all over the world. We'll do a little bit on that part to end out in May. Okay, so again, for those who would like to donate, this is a cue for Natasha also. If you'd like to donate, these events are free, but we would like to, we always accept donations. We accept donations via Zelle. You can write a check, put some cash in an envelope. We'll take that also, but any donations are greatly appreciated. And let's see. Last piece of paper. Okay. Again, thank you, Tracy. Thank you, everyone, for spending an evening with us. Go to olscretreat.org for additional talks and retreats coming up. Please register. I can be reached at kjgwhitmer@gmail.com. Any suggestions, feedback, ideas for next year, bring them our way. We would love to hear them. And eventually, hopefully, we will get back to talks at the retreat center. But don't worry, we'll always have the virtual part included. So good night. God bless. And we will see you in February. Good night, everyone.